You're listening to the Disruptive Franchise podcast with Stacey Can, the podcast that celebrates innovation in franchising and peeks behind the curtain of failure, success, and the future of the franchise industry. Welcome to this week's episode of the Disruptive Franchise podcast with me, your host, Stacey Can. This week is a solo episode where I'm going to be talking about the dangers of franchising too soon. Where to start? I think firstly, I get asked an awful lot about, is my business suitable for franchising? And so I have a 7-step framework. The 360 franchise framework. And the first step on that is always viability check. So we look at whether the business is able to be, process driven, systemized, proven, all of the things that make it viable. Is it a stable business? Have you got a stable customer flow? Is it going to work long term? Those kind of things. And the honest answer is most businesses can be franchised unless you're following like a trend or a fad. But one of the key things that I think trips us up a bit at times is when should I franchise? Now, I have examples of businesses that actually created the business to franchise. So the business was created as a purpose-built franchise, and that has worked really, really well, huge success. So it's possible to franchise right from day one and build a franchise if you know that that's what you're going to do. I think, however, unless you are kind of purposely driving a business to immediately franchise, there are some dangers that I think it's worth chatting about to franchising too soon. And, how long is a piece of string? There's no real answer on this one, so I guess I'm going to kind of debate with myself a little bit here. But I think one of the tricky things is that a franchise is all about having a proven model. And, any prospective franchisee who's looking at investing in buying your franchise should be asking, what's my return on investment likely to be? And how am I going to make that money back? And can you demonstrate? And with the franchisor hat on, we can never guarantee the income. We might get a franchisee who comes in and absolutely smashes it out of the park and makes an absolute fortune. Is really dedicated, runs it full time, invests in staff, self-development, has the right mindset. So we don't want to confine our potential franchisees by saying, you can earn £36,000 a year, or you can earn £1 million a year. We don't want to be responsible for that income as the franchisor, and we should never be. But we should be able to give them illustrations, and we should be able to make it feel safe for them to invest. And here is the first danger of franchising too soon, because if we franchise too soon and we can't show them how it can be safe for them to invest that money and where that ROI is going to come back, we're going to put an awful lot of people off. And that's okay, actually. We don't have, we shouldn't be trying to recruit everyone who ever contacts us. That's a big red flag. But what it also does is it damages your confidence as the franchisor. If you've got people walking away because they're saying, well, I can't see how I make my money back. You will always get an element of that. They are the wrong, they're not your ideal franchisee. They're the wrong kind of person. But, you should be in a position in your business where you are confident and unshakable in terms of knowing that they can then replicate what you've done in a stable way and make, potentially X, Y, Z amount of money. So if we franchise too early and we don't have that, it gives us a bit of a shakeable foundation. As a franchisor, the reason that franchises are so successful is we have proven structures, proven systems and proven models. So I guess the first danger really is that if we go too early, potentially the finances don't quite stack up, or we can't sit confidently on those finances. And that doesn't just damage, the franchisee perception and make recruitment harder, it damages your confidence. And if you are a new franchisor with damaged confidence, it's quite hard to recover that. I'm going to be completely honest with you. So that's the first danger, really, of franchising too early. The second danger of franchising too early with your business is that if everything's still developing and changing, you can't always provide the clarity that a franchisee is going to need. Most people who come into, let's say, lifestyle franchising, so forget the investment people first, park those guys. From a owner operator, never run a business before, they need clarity from you. They need to know what they're doing. They need to feel safe and they need to feel guided by you. And if you're still changing and tweaking what you're doing and you're not quite sure, then that's going to come across as you're not quite sure. And you're either going to get the kind of franchisee who then pushes your buttons and makes you panic, or tries to change things and be more in control than you want them to be because the boundaries aren't right. Or you get a kind of franchisee who gets very nervous around that and then underperforms as a result. So that second danger really is not having that, that base of this is what we're doing, not being sure enough. Now, I will say, as I said, this is like a debate with myself. What I will say is it's fine to be organically growing in your franchise. Over time, you are going to add new things in. You are going to change things. You are going to test things. But you should be testing them in a safe environment and rolling them out to your franchisee set rather than, hey, franchisees, I feel like we're going to do this today. That does not make for a good, controlled, profitable, happy franchise network. So that's our second danger. I think the third danger, really and truly, is that if you franchise too early, you don't have the systems to grow. Now, it doesn't happen very often, but maybe you franchise and you get such huge demand for your franchise that actually what happens is you end up suddenly with a cohort immediately and you're not ready for it. Well, if you have gone too early and you don't have a booking system or you don't have the structure in place, then it can be really, really tough to grow and support the franchises. Because the second that you've got franchisees and you are, a bona fide franchisor, you are going to have to provide the franchisee support, grow the business and recruit. You kind of get these three arms. So suddenly you don't have enough time to put systems and structures in place. And it's very common in franchises that grow that you're going to have to retrofit some stuff. You're going to have to go back and put in a CRM system probably because they're not things that you invest in as a franchisor when you start. Maybe you've got to go back and map because you didn't map your territories at the start because of financial restrictions. Like that's all quite normal. But the danger of going too soon and having not enough systems and processes in place is that it gives you a really hard time trying to manage those franchisees. And then the mental load of trying to do that and grow is hard. And I guess a real kind of important danger to highlight here is that if you don't have the systems in place that your franchisees need, they're going to go build their own. So then rather than coming back and retrofitting and saying, right, okay, this is how we do our booking system now, you will need it and you've got to pay X, Y, Z extra for it that you didn't have before. Franchisee, number one turns around and goes, yeah, okay, fine, not happy, but I'll do it. Franchisee two turns around and goes, well, I've got my own system. I don't want to take yours. I've already got my own. So it just gives you extra headaches that you don't need along the way. And in terms of those systems and processes, it's not just about the ops manual. It's about how the business actually works, how the data is collected, making sure you're compliant with the GDPR needs, making sure that actually you've got a platform for stable growth. And these are things we don't think about in the early days because we're like, I'm growing, it's great, I've got the money coming in, woo, doing all the things, spinning all the plates. But if you don't have a stable base for growth, then when you hit like franchisee number 5 or number 10, the house of cards collapses and it's a horrible place to be because suddenly, again, you got to go back and retrofit stuff whilst trying to push forward in the business. So 3 really big dangers there of franchising too early. I think the fourth one actually is arguably the most important though, and that is your mindset. If you are still growing your business and still figuring out what works for you as a business owner, it can massively impact your mindset to suddenly take on franchisees. You're going to feel responsible for them like they're your children. Financially, you're going to feel bad if they leave their jobs and then they don't start making the money that you know that they can make. And it all damages your mindset. And that can be really damaging from a business point of view, not just for your franchise business, but your main business, because we forget that, yay, we're franchised, woo! But you're probably running two businesses at that point, because you're running your original business in your original territory, and the franchise business as well. And so actually all this extra pressure, extra stress, I'm not particularly selling franchising here, but I want to be really real with you. It impacts your mindset, and it depends where you sit on that kind of personal development scale. I love personal development. I'm constantly working on my mindset. But if you haven't learned to do that yet as a business owner, again, it shakes you. You know, can you be resilient? Yeah, probably. You know, can you pick yourself up after a bad day? Yeah, probably. But can you put on that armour mentally of like your franchisees don't like something? Can you put that armour around you and say it's not personal, it's just business? Can you accept that things are going to go out from your franchisees that have typos in, or the branding isn't quite right? You know, can you put that armour around you and say, present, not perfect, I need to help them be the best that they can be? And from a mindset point of view, it can very quickly make you question, if you're not quite ready, are you good enough? Was this the right decision? Should you have franchised? Was it the wrong model for you? You know, am I going to take this forward or am I not? And all of this procrastination adds to your mental load. And so it takes up a huge amount of energy to be questioning, am I good enough at this? Am I doing a good enough job? Have I given them enough? Particularly if you've got a negative franchisee and they're going, this isn't good enough. You're not good enough. I'm not getting what I signed up for. You need to be in a place where you can just bat that away and turn them around, because it's a partnership. So you need to be strong enough mentally to be able to take the negative reactions from somebody in a partnership, work with them and turn them around without it impacting your mindset, without shaking your belief in what you've built. And that is tough. It's really tough to do. It's why most franchisors that kind of get stuck, they franchise, great, let's say they hit like 3, 4, 5, and then they stop growing, or 1, 2, 3 and stop growing, because that, not that they can't grow, it's not that their business is bad, it's that actually their mindset implodes them because they weren't ready for that, on top of going out there and having the pressure of making enough money to pay the mortgage, pay the business, all of the commitments. So that number 4, you know, maybe you don't have the right mindset yet, is so key, I think, as to why it can be dangerous to franchise too early. I really do think that. And I see it a lot. And it's the hardest thing to turn around, because you can't do a course on something like that and learn the skill and then just implement it. You know, that comes from your very core. That comes from changing how you are within. And it takes a lot of work to do it. So those are my kind of key dangers as to why it can be dangerous to franchise too early. There are loads more other kind of risks, but I think it's really important that you go in with your eyes open. Actually, you know, I'm not saying that you shouldn't franchise early in your business. If you start to see the success and you can see how it's going to go, yes, absolutely. But go in with your eyes open, because these are the things that damage you as a franchisor. And I think that we're getting better about it, but we have to really explore the mental health impact on a person as a franchisor, because it's not all roses. It doesn't all just go, oh, yep, go to plan, drip, 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 nice. Financial dangers there as well. You know, we talked a little bit about some of those in those 4 points, but your income is going to dip in your original business, because you either have to take somebody on to physically manage classes, service delivery, whatever it is that you're doing, whilst you put your time into growing the franchise, or you're going to have to reduce your workload in order to support your franchisees, or take on a support manager. So there are costs involved that will dip your finances in all of this as well. And again, that can have a huge impact on your mental health. And I think the other thing about franchising early is understanding the relationship with the franchisee, is that they're not your employee. You can't tell them what to do. And you've got contracts, so you can't just change your mind and up the price or tell them something. You have to stick to the contracts and the partnerships. And sometimes you go through really dark periods as a franchisor where you're like, oh, this wasn't worth it. I should have grown my business in a different way. This is really hard. It's not working. Have I done the right thing? But if you can get through that, it's wonderful. But it's how do you get through that on your own and not implode and not have work take over your life? So making sure that you have got the right outlets to help you with your mental health, to help you be in a position where you've got the right people to talk to, that you get in there and you go, nothing's working, the systems are falling down, and do you have the capital behind you to then go and fix those things? So I guess bonus point number 5, if the danger of franchising too early, is that you don't have the capital behind you. And you don't need a lot of money to start a business. You don't need a lot of money to start a franchise, but you do need to make sure that you invest in proper, watertight legal contracts that you understand. I work with a lot of new franchisors who don't understand their franchise agreement. It's dangerous. Okay, so number 5 is making sure that you've got the capital. And if something goes wrong and you need a system implemented, or you need to work with a specialist, that you've got some money behind you there as a buffer. And that's the hard bit, actually. I think we should sense check that when we look at franchising your business, because nothing runs smooth, really. Not really, ever. So it's having the contingency for how do I fix it? Because if you can't fix it, then you're stuck with it. And like I was just saying, that really impacts your mental load and your mental health, more importantly. So yeah, making sure that you've got everything really, really there. You don't need millions in the bank. You do need a contingency plan. And what I always advise anyone who's in those early stages of franchising or thinking about franchising, ideally, go and find franchisors and talk to them. Be in a community. I have a membership that you can join. I'll put the link in the show notes, but it's not about necessarily paying for support early. It's about having the right support and the right advice, and having people that have lived experience that can talk to you honestly about it. Because without that, let's say you go to a franchise consultant, they're like, yeah, great, we can franchise your business, let's go. And you find yourself 18 months later still in debt to that franchise consultant, with no franchisees, or 1 or 2 really painful franchisees that weren't right for your business, and you hate in life. That's the reality when we do it, in a bad way, at not the right time for us. So hopefully this episode hasn't put you off. It's not deliberately negative, but being disruptive, I think sometimes we have to be honest about what's involved. I'd love to know your thoughts on this. I'd love to know if you've been in these situations, or whether you're thinking about franchising or are grateful to now know about these situations. Drop me a DM, Stacey Can, franchise strategist, across all the social channels, and I'll see you next week. Before we finish up today, I'd love to just thank our podcast sponsors, Book When and Make Your Mark Podcast Agency, without whom this episode wouldn't have been possible. You can find more information on both amazing companies in the show notes. If you've enjoyed listening to today's episode, please also make sure that you hit the subscribe button, and I would absolutely love it if you left a review too. See you next time.